So, a while ago, I was sent news that now a Womanosphere exists and is somehow surging online and also growing alongside the Manosphere, and in this video I want to talk about it because I believe a Womanosphere and other stuff like it such as MGTOW or the 4B movement is irrelevant, and finally hammer that point home on this channel for all time. Let's begin. So, to understand why these imitations and copycats exist, we must first look at the original idea and why it exists. That original idea is the MGTOW philosophy and the Manosphere as a whole. It is an original idea because nothing like it existed before it, and because we created it out of nothing, we did not copy from others. And to point out why it exists to counter the worst elements of radical feminism and the current family and divorce court system, and no-fault divorce in general, alongside the erosion of male spaces and also the issues of false accusations of sexual harassment and assault, and to raise awareness about these issues. The MGTOW philosophy that was created due to these factors, and the community and the wider manosphere as a whole, is homegrown and politically neutral. It was not astroturfed or created to push for the victory of a specific candidate, nor employed by any political party to get votes from men. The fact that our MGTOW community and philosophy is homegrown and natural instead of artificially created or astroturfed is why it's successful. But that's something those trying to make copycats don't realize. With any good idea that has succeeded somewhat and gained popularity and influence in the world, you will naturally see those trying to copy it, or trying to make imitations and copycats. This Womanosphere thing being the latest version of it, and a Republican and conservative one at that. We have seen these copycats before, MGTOW around 2018 and 2019, 4B movement around 2024 and maybe 2023, and now this. And that's the point. None of them have actual original ideas on how to make a successful philosophy and community and how to apply principles of said philosophy in their daily lives. They have nothing original, nothing new, so they copy from us and try to make it sound like their own thing. But that is disingenuous and won't work. The reason it won't work is that there is nothing new, nothing original, nothing inspiring. Everything they're trying to do has been done already, and everything they're saying or trying to say has been said already. This brings me to the first two known imitations and copycats, that being MGTOW, standing for women going their own way, and the 4B movement. But MGTOW is the perfect example of what I'm talking about here. It lacks originality so much that it's just MGTOW, just our name, but with a W replacing the M, so it's women instead of men. It has done so much copying from MGTOW when it was spreading that its name is just MGTOW but with a letter swapped, so it's for them instead of being for us. It proves my point about this entire topic, even when mentioning the other copycats, and now I will mention the 4B movement. The 4B movement is only slightly better in the fact that they bothered to give it an original name, and have a vision that is somewhat separate from MGTOW, but even that is not really that much separate, to the point that neutral observers, and I can say this from my own experience, call the 4B movement MGTOW but for women. 4B movement is no sex, no dating, no marriage, and no children, so essentially MGTOW but even more restrictive. They took MGTOW and its rules, removed what made them good and rational and in defense of freedom, and essentially made it worse by making it far more restrictive and authoritarian. Regarding the 4B movement, we, as in MGTOW and the Manosphere, don't even see it as a threat because the most it can do is grow, and if it grows, MGTOW also grows due to there being more single men. So a feminist copycat actually helps MGTOW, actually helps the original grow. So we win, no matter what they do. We just can't lose here. And now I can talk about the Womanosphere, the thing that is supposedly surging online. Unlike the first two copycats, it appears this one is conservative and Republican and quote-unquote anti-woke in nature. And I will say my thoughts on it. The Womanosphere is essentially a Republican Party ploy to gather more votes from women, thinking that they can simply win more votes from women and thus elections by creating a supposed media ecosystem targeting women, thinking that they can build a clone in a few years what organically developed in around 20 years. They think that because of a significant portion of the Manosphere voted for them, hoping that their votes would get meaningful actual change in terms of no-fault divorce, that they can somehow create an entire clone of everything we built and talked about but for women, and thus gain more votes and also sideline us and attempt to cut us out of the equation. They think we are nothing more than just votes and a couple of channels that they can easily recreate. And they are wrong. Big time. You cannot artificially create in a few years, or even less, something that naturally grew around in 20 years. You cannot make something popular unless it is original or at the very least a new and innovative take on something that already exists. You cannot rip out the soul of something, leave the skeleton frame, and maybe change a few things, and expect it to be just as successful as the original. The reason the MGTOW community and the Manosphere is still here, and the copycats are not and constantly changing form, is that it is original and grew naturally without influence from others, and is focused on real issues. Issues such as no-fault divorce and the disaster that it currently is in regards to alimony and child support, and false accusations, which are the consequences of the Me Too era we still have to deal with. And also the attacks on masculinity and male spaces done by feminists, in particular by calling masculinity toxic. We have built a community around dealing with these issues, and have actual solutions on how to avoid them and remedy them, as well as counter any potential problems or troublemakers. They do not. Because of the fact that we were based on real issues and are thus not influenced by election cycles or political parties, we are able to grow, even when algorithms are stacked against us. Even in 2020 and 2021, when YouTube was still trying to discourage Manosphere content, we still managed to somewhat succeed and grow, or at least maintain our position. It's why we're still here and why people like Bulldog Mindset are forgettable. Because of the fact we are neutral and developed naturally and organically, we aren't astroturfs of any political party, which means we don't need any political party to back us, or to fund us, nor do we need government funding and institution backing. That is the beauty of MGTOW and the Manosphere. It is a constant. A natural constant that will keep existing no matter what. Unfortunately for the Republicans trying to make a Womanosphere a thing, their version, it is not natural or a constant, which means it has weaknesses we do not. The weaknesses is that it relies on external support and external force to prop it up, or to maintain it, or at the very least maintain the mirage that it is somehow popular or surging. Its other weakness is that unlike the Manosphere, it has no independent, coherent ideology that unifies it and makes it strong and capable of surviving on its own, and that inspires their followers to work together. Their ideology comes from an external source, this time being some vague version of anti-feminist and anti-woke traditionalist conservatism, which was given to them by the Tradcons and the Republican Party. If a community or a movement does not have an independent or coherent viewpoint, a philosophy or an ideology to guide it, and if it relies on external support and foreign force to back it up, it cannot survive the troubles that a community needs to be able to survive. It will not survive algorithm changes, or shadow banning, or even outright banning. Where MGTOW would work just fine, a Womanosphere would just collapse from the external pressure, and what happens if the external support and external force that props it up just leaves, or just stops propping it up? You guessed it, the Womanosphere collapses. And the reason for why the Womanosphere collapses is simple. It was never created as an independent community or philosophy to begin with. It was never meant to be. If all you create is an artificial astroturf, sure you can prop it up, but it will collapse eventually. One election to go wrong for the Republican Party and the Tradcons, a presidential one at that in 2028, is all it will take to send the Womanosphere into collapse, and is why I'm confident that it simply does not have the same longevity that MGTOW has. And this brings me to the final point I want to make in this video. None of these clones or imitations are actually relevant in the grand scheme of things. None of them are important or big enough or independent enough to challenge MGTOW. WGTOW wasn't. The 4B movement, while growing, can't challenge it because MGTOW just benefits. and neither is the Womanosphere. All that's being done is making clones that may or may not succeed, but often have a guarantee of failure because it fails to compete with the original. We have seen this before. For the lack of a better way to describe it, MGTOW is too big to fail. It is simply too big to fail in any meaningful way. Even if you scrubbed MGTOW content entirely from the internet, there are archives, and even if there weren't, men would still be MGTOW and would spread it in other ways. This just doesn't happen with the female clones of MGTOW or the Manosphere. MGTOW has a purpose in this world. These other clones do not. So, we have nothing to worry about here. No chance of a Womanosphere or any of these other clones overtaking us, because it won't happen. They don't have the fundamental building blocks a community needs to be united and powerful. So, in line with my point, the Womanosphere and all these other clones are irrelevant, and there's no need to worry about any of them potentially growing or competing with us. We are too big to fail, and we are too significant for anyone to let us fail. Our success is assured. Theirs is not. To sum it up, MGTOW and the Manosphere is the only thing that matters. These clones do not and are irrelevant and won't change anything and can't hope to compete, and we should thus ignore any such thing in the future if it pops up, because it's not worthy of our attention. With that being said, this has been Igor MGTOW and Video Games. Like and subscribe and click the bell notifications on YouTube if you enjoyed the video. And follow me on odyssey.com, MGTOW.tv, Twitter and Rumble. And thanks for watching.